Is art meant to last or to explode? Because if it doesn't shake you, if it doesn't hit you in a single unforgettable moment, was it ever art at all? That's the question that defines Deidara. Not just a fighter, not just a criminal, but an artist obsessed with one idea, that true beauty doesn't live forever, it detonates. Deidara didn't just create explosions, he believed in them. To him, art wasn't something you stare at for years. It wasn't something preserved in museums, frozen in time, admired slowly. No, that kind of art was dead, lifeless, meaningless. Real art, in his eyes, was alive for only a moment, a flash of brilliance, a perfect instant of chaos that burns itself into your memory and then disappears forever. Because in that single moment, it forces you to feel something real. Shock, awe, fear, emotion. And to Deidara, that emotional impact was everything. But where does that belief come from? Because no one is born believing destruction is beautiful. Deidara was raised in an environment where power defined worth, where recognition didn't come from who you were, but from what you could do. And over time, he found something that made people look at him. Explosions. Not just as weapons, but as expressions, as statements, as identity. Every detonation became more than destruction. It became proof that he existed, that he mattered, that he could leave a mark on the world, even if that mark only lasted a second. And that's where his psychology gets deeper. Because Deidara doesn't just want to create, he wants to be seen. He wants his art to demand attention, to force the world to acknowledge him. Because deep down, like many people, he fears being insignificant, forgotten, invisible. So instead of creating something that quietly exists, he creates something that can't be ignored. Something loud, something violent, something impossible to look away from. And isn't that something we see even outside of anime? People chasing attention, chasing impact, chasing that one moment where everyone looks at them and says, "Did you see that?" Because in a world full of billions, being noticed feels like power. And Deidara took that idea to the extreme. But here's where the conflict begins. Because not everyone sees art the way he does. Take Sasori, for example. Someone who believes the complete opposite. To Sasori, art isn't about moments, it's about permanence. It's about creating something that lasts forever, something untouched by time. Where Deidara sees beauty in destruction, Sasori sees beauty in control, in stillness, in eternity. And that clash isn't just about art, it's about identity. Deidara believes if it doesn't explode, it's not alive. Sasori believes if it doesn't last, it has no meaning. Two completely different ways of seeing the world. And this is where Deidara's ego reveals itself. Because he doesn't just disagree with other perspectives, he rejects them completely. To him, his definition of art isn't just a truth, it's the truth. And anyone who disagrees simply doesn't understand. That's not confidence, that's ego. The kind of ego that ties your entire identity to one belief. So if that belief is challenged, it feels like you are being attacked. That's why his fights aren't just battles, they're performances. Every explosion is a statement. Every attack is a message. He's not just trying to win, he's trying to prove something. To validate his philosophy, to show the world that his way of seeing art, his way of existing, is superior. But here's the tragedy. Because when your identity is built entirely on how others react to you, you become dependent on their validation. Even if you pretend you don't care, you do. Because if no one is watching, if no one reacts, if no one is affected by your art, then what does that say about you? And Deidara couldn't accept that. That's why he needed bigger explosions, louder statements, more extreme expressions. Because the more impact he created, the more he could convince himself that he mattered, that his existence had weight. But there's a flaw in this mindset. Because impact that only lasts a moment fades. And once it's gone, you have to create another one, and another, and another, constantly chasing that same level of attention, that same reaction, that same feeling of being seen. It becomes a cycle, one that never truly satisfies you. And that's where Deidara's philosophy starts to collapse. Because even though his art is explosive, it's temporary. It doesn't build, it doesn't grow, it doesn't last. It burns bright and then disappears, leaving nothing behind but memory. And sometimes, even that fades. So the question becomes, is something still meaningful if it doesn't last? Or is the moment itself enough? Because Deidara would argue that the moment is everything, that the intensity of a single second can outweigh years of existence. That something doesn't need to last forever to be beautiful. It just needs to matter when it exists. And that idea isn't entirely wrong. Because think about the most powerful moments in your own life, the ones that changed you, the ones you never forgot. Most of them didn't last long, but their impact did. Their memory did. So maybe Deidara wasn't completely wrong, but he wasn't completely right either. Because there's a balance. Art that lasts gives meaning over time. Art that explodes creates emotion in the moment. And the most powerful creations might actually exist somewhere in between. But Deidara never found that balance. He chose one extreme and built his entire identity around it. And in the end, that's what defined him. Not just as an artist, but as a person who needed the world to feel something, even if it meant destroying everything to do it. So now the question comes back to you. In a world where everyone is trying to be seen, trying to be remembered, trying to leave their mark, would you rather create something that lasts forever? Or something so powerful it can never be forgotten, even if it only exists for a moment?